Hello. Hi, everybody.
That's better.
Mine is off. Or if you could turn it up a little bit. Check one. Can y'all hear me? You can hear me? Okay.
All right, it's showtime. Good morning. I'm Llewellyn King. I'm a journalist. I've been writing about energy and technology for many decades. I founded the Energy Daily in 1973, along with New Technology Week, which came along a bit later. I'm no longer publishing those. I did it for 30-some years, and I now write for Forbes. I have a syndicated column, and as the MC reminded you, I'm the executive producer of the PBS program, White House Chronicle. I'm delighted to have my old friends here on the podium today to talk about managing the information revolution. I'm not quite sure you can manage a revolution. That seems a bit of a dichotomous undertaking. However, what I mean is how to get a foothold, I suppose, on a revolution and make sure that it goes somewhat the way you're hoping for. Guests today, my guests are Lexi Assumpto, Vice President of Business Development at Clean World, which is, I believe, primarily a lighting company.
That's how it started, yes.
And she'll tell us more. And Brooks Bennett, Assistant City Manager at the City of Round Rock. I'm going to begin by asking Brooks to tell us how innovation is taking place in his city and how, if he's managing it, he is doing that. Brooks, it's all yours.
As everybody knows, the world is constantly changing. Seems like change is moving faster than ever. And so running a municipality, it's like riding a wild bronco. We heard a lot of the discussion on the drive for data centers and huge energy users. We've experienced that greatly in Round Rock. We converted what was a Sears call center that opened in Round Rock in 1999. It is now the Saby Data Center, home of the Texas Advanced Computing Center's new supercomputer. So what started out as a place you'd call to get parts for a washing machine that was broken down is now turning into an advanced computing center. That's happened in the course of a couple of years. So it's amazing the evolution that is taking place. The economy is rapidly shifting. For those of us that are in Central Texas, to me, I can feel the vibe is a little bit different than in the past. When I was born in the city of Round Rock in 1981, we were 10,000 people. Now we're 130,000 people. So my joke is Round Rock is in our awkward teenage years, and we're trying to figure out who we're going to be when we grow up. And the ability to vision into the future of what a community is going to look like in 20 or 30 years is extremely important, now more so than ever. Round Rock of 1993, before Dell Computer came to Round Rock, was a very different community. We were living, hand to mouth and day to day, and having that great employer come, and we had to deal with all of the infrastructure that was necessary to serve those 12,000 employees. And so we went onto a rocket ship right then, and we've had to, again, ride the bronco of figuring out how to provide service for all of these businesses and all of the quality of life amenities, which is insatiable of people that are moving into the region, and how to provide public safety that is responding quickly, and do all of that, frankly, in a political environment that is a little bit more adversarial to cities than it has ever been in the state of Texas. So that's kind of, Helen hit it a little bit at the end, is, for those of us in local government, we're worried about what the next legislative session is going to look like. The economic backbone of the state of Texas is in municipal corporations of cities. We have the same powers as the legislature of the state of Texas unless we're preempted. And Texas is a giant state. The way that you operate Brownsville is different than the way that we run the city of Round Rock, is different than the way you run a small city in East Texas. So I think what we need from a city standpoint is we need to be flexible. We need to have a regulatory framework that is open to innovation and allows us to go out there and do the business of, and I believe this deeply, and to me, this is the reason that I exist and the reason that I do what I do, is our job is to put in the fundamental, foundational infrastructure necessary for the success of private businesses and private individuals. That is what government at the local level should be doing, is putting in frameworks to allow you to come in, invest, innovate, and be successful. So an attack on cities' authority should be seen by the business community as an attack on your ability to execute on these platforms that we have in the state called cities.
Thank you very much, Brooks. What a splendid beginning. I think maybe this should be described as evolution, not revolution. And fitting right into that becomes Lexi's company with the services it provides. And maybe you would tell us a bit about the company to begin with, Lexi.
Sure. For everyone who's not familiar with Clearworld, we began back in 2011. Our founder and CEO invented it when he saw just the disparity in the LED market, right? So it was a waiting game, and we've been years, decades ahead of the innovation, because when it began, it's a vertically wrapped, flexible solar wrap that's completely integrated, and it's to support multiple applications. So it started off as a light, but security, Wi-Fi, broadband expansion, IoT, LPR readers, USB chargers. It's really a foundation of power, a flexible foundation of power that wraps around new or existing poles. So though it did begin as a light, we are working with ISPs for digital inclusion with all of the incentives in place today. To your point, it is very frustrating as an innovator to work with cities and want to fulfill the need of the community and to see their hands being tied by regulatory constraints. So there's never, whenever we train new people in the office, the thing we always talk about is standard operating procedures, right? And, there is none when it comes to working with cities to help solve their issues, right? In our prior conversation and discussion before Helen, we mentioned the evolution, and it really isn't an evolution. It is a transition, and it does require a lot of relationships and transparency, and really collaborating and working together for the greater good to make our cities what we envision them to be.
Lexi, maybe you would give us some example of cities you worked with.
Sure. So back in 2021, with ARPA funding, we deployed small cells around municipal buildings, fire stations, libraries to deploy high-speed Wi-Fi into homes and businesses. Now, this was done with COVID CARES Act funding. There was a free public Wi-Fi, so a lower speed that everyone in the community could hop onto. And then it also created an additional revenue stream for the city. So we are a part of P3 partnerships. We also have universal term contracts with multiple cities. We find a lot of success moving forward with cities with piggyback contracts, because when you're an innovator and you're responding to RFPs, if the city, when they put out the RFP, doesn't understand the full complexity of your solution and how you can address their needs, they aren't calling out specifically for it, and they're leaving a lot on the table. So with COVID CARES Act funding in Dallas, now we did this throughout Virginia as well, we work with all ISPs, so I'm not talking against any ISP, but what we were able to do was come in at a 20th of the we served 20 times more people at a half of the cost of fiber directly to the home, right? So Clearworld is a foundation of power, and so we can come off of any backhaul, whether it's a tower in a rural setting, a fiber backhaul, Ethernet, or any municipal building that already has a network, and we can extend these poles, whether we want it with a street light or not, to support transit, cameras, functionality, smart parking, while also serving our underserved communities first. That's what we're seeing anyway, by terms of the grants that are coming out are to serve underserved communities and the digital equity. So we're working with cities, with utilities. Currently, right now, we are working with the California Energy Commission and EPRI to create a net metering device, which has been finalized, that sheds the load. And so in addition to just having off-grid power, we actually have the ability to have bi-directional power for distribution use, so that during peak hours, at the press of a button, the utility can push that stored power back into the grid as an additional grid resiliency piece, right? So we're in many different industries, and I think the markets, many markets are warming up quicker than others, but we continue to build relationships with cities to address their needs and meet them where they are.
About how do we measure the size of your operation? How many cities? Is it 10? Is it 100?
Sure. Clearworld has worked in the last 2.5, so we've been in business since 2011. In the last 2.5 years, we've sold to over 250 U.S. cities, 10 countries, every branch of the military. We are also a standard with Duke Energy and Southern companies, in addition to our efforts with PG&E, SoCal Edison, and San Diego Gas and Electric, with this EPRI effort for our grid-tied use.
Wow, that's very impressive. Brooks, let's refer to the frustration that some cities face with regulations, with old laws. To what extent do you run into that? And is it true of Round Rock, or are you totally autonomous?
No, I think it is statewide in the state of Texas. So when I get to talk to other city managers and management professionals in local government, it's a general concern. Specifically in the state of Texas, we have cities that are called home rule municipalities. I mentioned it earlier. So once you get over 5,000 people, the people can petition to become a city. They vote to put in place a thing in Texas called a charter, home rule charter. That's effectively the constitution of your city, and that is a document that governs the way that you operate. If you're a nerd like me, whenever I go to a new city, I like to look at their charter and read it. You learn a lot about how a city operates. So for those in business, looking at the charters of cities that you might be looking to do business with might give you some insight, because the state of Texas allows so much flexibility in how we organize and structure ourselves. So example would be a city with single member districts where each council member represents a geographic portion of town is going to operate differently than in Round Rock. All of our council members are elected at large, right? So there's some philosophical ways of how you set up your city, and everybody thinks that their charter is the best. Round Rock's charter is the best. We're set up really well. And it's always interesting to me too, because it's peculiar to hear a bureaucrat from a government entity complaining about government regulation. It's a little bit like the pot calling the kettle black for a lot of people. But in Round Rock, our development philosophy is make it happen. It's that simple. We want and we need businesses to come into our communities and thrive. There is no quality of life without a job, right? So you need employers, and you need people that are understanding the long haul vision of that community, that are coming in to plant their roots. And if you go into virtually any chamber of commerce in the state, when I've gone to one of their meetings, you see people that are deeply vested in the vision of that community and their ability to execute. And those are the people that are on city councils, and those are the people that are putting forth their hopes and dreams of what a city and their city can be. For Round Rock, in the late 70s, we didn't want to, and for those that don't know, Round Rock, we're 15 minutes to the north of where we're sitting right now. So we didn't want to just be a bedroom community of Austin. We wanted to be a place where kids that grew up could come back and have jobs like at Emerson Process Management or Dell Computer or now Saby or Switch or these data centers. And so we set off on recruiting companies to come to our community. And to have the ability to recruit a company, there has to be a return on investment. Newsflash, cities run a little bit like businesses. We make choices that are going to benefit our community. Now we have a little bit different view of what success is. We're not chasing a quarterly return or trying to meet metrics for the year, and those are very important things. But I'm looking at stuff like when I go to New York City or I go to Savannah, Georgia, and I look at the investments made 150 years ago in their park system, and I vision what somebody in Round Rock is going to think of what I did 150 years from now. That's what we need to be doing. But if I can't have a return on investment, it makes it very difficult for me to want to bring companies to the community. You saw that with a lot of cities when Amazon was announcing their second headquarters push, and you saw people in communities picketing and protesting that they didn't want Amazon to come to their community. There's a reason that people do that. And Round Rock, we have always wanted businesses to come, because the other news flash is generally businesses pay more in taxes than they have in service needs, and that offsets the property taxes to the residents who live there. So if you can show that math and show people how a business isn't a drain on them, business actually brings them jobs, quality of life, keeps the property taxes low, then they will, invest in bringing companies to town. But if the state or the country doesn't have an appropriate profit motive for a city to get a return, then you're going to see cities start to be adversarial to development. And that's like, if you look at cities and cultures in general, we rise slow and we fall fast. And the minute that we start to slip, we fall. And to me, that's the concern. So making sure that, as much as possible, the state allows all of us unique, special, individual cities to have representation by elected councils at the lowest level who are at the coffee shops, they're at the Chamber of Commerce meetings, you can find them, you can talk to them. Let those folks make decisions and build up different, build up cities to be, what they want them to be.
Thank you. Brooks, two of the challenges facing cities are water and electricity in Texas especially. How do you approach those two issues, and do you have enough of both?
Yeah, so I mean, we have a saying in Texas, whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting over, right? So water is where the biggest battles are, especially in Central Texas. Another important component of our community story, in 1978, our city ran out of water. We were 100% on the Edwards Aquifer, which is generally here in Central Texas. It's very rangy, and the people went to take showers in the morning and the water didn't come out. We didn't have a Home Depot at the time, but if we had, every single pitchfork would have been purchased and they would have marched on City Hall, and they did. One of the most scary, I wasn't there, I wasn't born yet, but so I was told, one of the scariest council meetings we ever had was that meeting in the high school gym when there had to be accountability for why we ran out of water. So the city of Round Rock immediately went and built a plan to connect to Lake Georgetown, which is a small city to the north, and connect to Lake Stillhouse Hollow, a larger lake to the north. 10 years ago, we partnered with the cities of Leander and Cedar Park to get water out of the LCRA basin, out of Lake Travis. And so we have worked very diligently for decades to build up the strength of our water system. And, very concerned of how the legislature is going to handle, water in the state of Texas is a very peculiar thing. And any sort of regulation on the way that we handle getting water and moving water is imperative to us. And I will spare you that, but if you're interested more in a water discussion and the peculiarities of the state of Texas of how we're set up with certificates of convenience and necessity and who has the right to serve and how that works, it's very detailed and very difficult to explain. But if I can back up for a second, those are important variables. All of those complexities add up and build up the way that a business model works for a city. So anybody messing with some of those low-level variables in our business model can extrapolate out and have huge unintended consequences long-term for how things go. On the electricity side, in Round Rock, we're in a deregulated market. So Encore is our transmission distribution utility. And as you've seen on the charts and graphs, the pain is real. The insatiable desire for energy is growing. These data centers use tens of thousands, if not more, equivalent power as residential homes. And that doesn't show any sign of slowing. So as much as possible at the state level to allow flexibility and innovation and ability to time shift that use, to me, is incredibly important. I'm a home automation enthusiast, so I can definitely talk for hours and hours on that stuff. It's incredibly important. In my opinion, most problems today boil down into two things. They're power problems or they're time problems, and they're both equally important and growing.
Thank you. Lexi, when you approach a new city, a burgeoning customer opportunity, what do you tell them? What do you say? We can do A for you, we can do B for you, we can do C for you, and your benefits will be Y.
So typically the cities reach out to us or consulting partners. What we've been seeing when we first started 11 years ago, this was grassroots. Our CEO took a trailer door to door, knocked on doors, showed pamphlets, brought everybody outside, showed them how it works. And if anyone here wants to see it, we have them down the street on Red River on 6th Street. They're just our standard lighting, but if you want to take a look, that's where they are. But when we're approaching cities, we go after what the needs that we're seeing, right? Initially, like especially right now in Texas, it's growing. I mean, cities across Texas are booming, and that causes a lot of opportunities for innovation, for the city, for the community, but it also has a lot of challenges. There's pedestrian deaths, there's inequity on, services. So, we look to see what they are facing and what who they're looking to serve. And then what we do is, whether it's us, a consultant, or an engineer that was hired to reach, to find the innovations available to them, we come up with a plan. So typically this looks like 4 or 5 different solutions for lighting, for security, for Wi-Fi or broadband deployment, and then also just different smart applications for security at public schools, which is another huge one that we, right now we're working with the city of Dallas and their police department, Trinity Trails, which is a part of a nonprofit called Safe and Happy Trails, if anyone in here is familiar with that. Our trail systems are not connected, they're improperly lit, and this is nationwide, right? So we're working with trails all over where this is the same common issue, where people are getting attacked, they're getting mugged, and they don't have emergency services. So we have things like gunshot detection, emergency call buttons, things that we can deploy off-grid quickly. That takes me kind of back to another major concern for most of the cities that we work with, is scalability. So we have all of these different, incentives and things that the cities are saying they need to accomplish, and they have a set amount of time that they need to accomplish it in. And so, to go back to the pilot, we were talking about pilots for a minute there. That's how we started, right? So when we first approached cities, we said, hey, here's your need, here's a pilot project. Let's vet it out. Let's see how we can build a trusting relationship, see how the solution works, and how we can apply it better to serve more of your needs.
Thank you. To what extent do you build on existing infrastructure? Poles is a very obvious example of extant infrastructure. Do you come in and say you need to totally redo this, or do you say we can build on what you've got, even if it is not ideal?
That is a big ask. No city wants to completely do a full overhaul of their street lighting. All right, and most cities don't want to, and I might be not speaking for you, but a lot of cities that we work with don't want to deal with their street lighting. The utilities don't want to deal with their street lighting. That is rapidly changing now with broadband and security and AI and autonomous driving. That is rapidly changing, but typically the city does not want to deal with that. So what we'll do is a partner will come in and do an audit, or I'll work hand in hand with the public works team to see what infrastructure is still viable, and then we can just wrap around any existing pole. So we do, wooden poles with a lot of utilities that we work with, straight, tapered, concrete, anything. A lot of our developers, especially in historic neighborhoods, they want the same look, right? So we are very custom in the solutions that we provide, everything from the power, right? So we can provide anything from 260 watts of solar wrapped around an existing pole, all the way up to 1140. So we're talking multiple applications, off-grid power, 3-4 weeks. And we can do this around existing poles. So we would never ask a city, hey, let's just remove all of the poles, because that becomes an issue with the right-of-way with the utility too. So, you have to approach each city differently and get a feel for their landscape.
Yeah, and just chime in real quick on that. It's interesting. So for the city of Round Rock, because we don't have an electric utility, we don't own the poles. And so Encore owns the poles, and on the poles are the lights. So, and the lights, they charge the city for power for the lights that are on the poles. And so we've undergone a lot of effort to try and actually purchase our lights from Encore, and that has been a challenge and very difficult. So again, each city being different, if you wanted to come and sell a product into Round Rock and we don't own poles, it's very difficult to make those types of sales. So we're all very unique and difficult. But yes, Round Rock, we're a little weird. We did try and buy our lights back.
This happens all of the time. So most of the cities that we've worked with, they say, hey, we're going to go buy back the poles. Sometimes they call us after the utility already gave them a price to buy back their poles, right? But it depends on the landscape, like how you were saying. So we can work with the utility too. So being a disruptor, people always ask me all the time, like, isn't this your competition? Are you trying to take over their territory? No. We want to be complementary. We want to be a supplemental power source. It's just a matter of getting everybody at the table and changing the way that we think about serving our community. So, as an example, we're working with a very large community in Florida who is having a tumultuous relationship with their current utility. And so, we're looking at doing a takeoff agreement where the utility still gets the maintenance and performative contract and the operational contract, and we come in and we work with them. So everything that we do, Clear World, our slogan at the office is "Get in where you can fit in." So we want to make sure that whatever we're bringing to the table, we're complementary and we're able to do it in a sustainable and future-proof kind of way for our cities.
Lexi, do you have supply chain challenges?
We do not. So we have about 3 sources for each part. Our system is completely patented, but we have final assembly in New Orleans. A little backstory on Clear World and myself really quickly is that my background is in disaster response. Very, very lucrative. I'm just joking. In New Orleans, because I grew up with every year there was a storm coming through, and there was always roofs with blue roofs everywhere, as long as I can remember. So my background is in disaster response, and to kind of touch on the disaster response, but to go back to what Helen was saying earlier with Brownsville is, that is why we started, because the need was there long before the word climate change was big and before sustainability was even on the docket, right? We need reliable power. And so we wrapped around, parks and gave away a ton of poles around New Orleans, and we have projects in Nassau Bay that have been in Texas after Hurricane Harvey. They were 6 feet under rushing floodwater, and they remain the only lights on in the city for 3 weeks. Now, there's a lot of impact there because someone that's used to dealing with no power for weeks at a time, we can deal without our street lights for a couple of weeks. But we can't deal with not being able to talk to our loved ones after a storm, right? So connectivity, access to information, and emergency response services is crucial for our cities, especially that are hit by natural disasters regularly.
Thank you. Very interesting. Brooks, I think last year you mentioned that you were using AI. Would you tell us where that stands and to what extent it is being incorporated into the management of your city?
Sure. Yeah. AI is, it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. And a lot of the tools that we're using now, especially from kind of a typical government use standpoint, they're starting to grow in their capabilities and complexity. Interesting thing that I did and have tried to do, and maybe it's a little bit insane, but tried to model legislators. So maybe take some policy positions and throw them into an AI tool, and then ask it questions about how it might feel about different policies going forward and what their thoughts might be on different things. It's amazing what these tools are doing and how fast they're growing. And it's very interesting to see how government is striving to utilize those on a daily basis. To me, some of the concern with AI is it is so easy now to create volumes of information. It's easy to digest volumes, but it's easy to create volumes of information. And one of the jokes I heard, in fact, this week, I don't know if it's real or not. I guess I'll have to go and do some more research. That's the other challenge is it's more and more difficult to decide what's real and what's not. But there was a desire, for a small university in the state of Texas to have a nuclear power reactor. And the way that they were able to get that done was they had AI fill out the 2 million pages of federal paperwork that were necessary for them to be able to bring that online. And that's somewhat of a joke. Maybe it's real. I don't know. But to me, that's the concern, and another big push for all of us as this world grows in complexity to strive for simplicity as much as possible in everything we do, especially for our government entities. It is so easy to just tack on new rules, regulations, and laws. And for so much of what I do now, to answer the question, I'll get a big, complicated packet of information, and to be able to drop that PDF into an AI tool and ask it questions or converse with it, or to have, once you know your city council pretty well, you know some of the questions that they're going to have. And so I can ask questions as if I'm a council member and get ahead of things that they might be concerned about or worried about in a giant document and contract that's coming before them. Because for so many of our councils, when you have an agenda that's a couple hours long, say you've got light meeting, 20 items, each of those items has, 100-page backup document. That's 2,000 pages of information you're expecting, a citizen servant to go through. And so being able to access that, gain insight and understanding out of those documents and share that as much as possible is something that a year ago I wouldn't have thought that I would be doing nearly as much as I'm doing now, is just using it to filter through and make sense out of complicated topics and documents.
Alexei, how much of a role does AI play in your work? I imagine that data is very important when you're working with the city, and it's in theory, a great data manager.
I'm sorry, can you please repeat your question?
I was wondering how much of a role is AI playing in your operations?
Well, that's the beauty of the time that we're in right now, and where we are in the evolution or the transition, right? So as a decentralized power source, simplified solutions, to go back to what Brooke said, is really the key here, because we want to be able to build on it, right? So there's more data that we don't even know that cities can be implementing and leveraging, right? We are a part of P3 partnerships, as an example, in Florida, where the additional revenue coming in from the broadband is one piece, but the data is the gold, right? So insurance companies, where they want to invest, developers, all of those data points are definitely a driver for cities to implement more smart city solutions. In our day-to-day in my office, it's not huge, other than what Brooks was saying again, is taking those city charters and those documents and contracts and uploading them and having them help me to understand how the city moves best.
Very interesting. Tell me, are you challenged by people? Is there a people shortage? Are skilled workers at a premium?
I wouldn't say there's a shortage of skilled workers from my perspective, from a manufacturer. But what I will say is every sustainability director I speak with is a team of one or two. I haven't worked with many cities who their sustainability coordinator or their head of sustainability is also speaking with their information department, right? They're not speaking with the CIO. And so everyone tends to work in silos, which I think is the biggest shortage, is just the communication shortage. I think there's a breakdown with municipalities as far as everyone being able to sit at the table together and come up with one cohesive action plan instead of piecemealing pilots. I do also appreciate, though, that is where we were and that is where we needed to be in order to validate different technologies. But I think what we're seeing now is that next step where we are bringing more stakeholders to the table to collaborate more efficiently and serve a greater need.
Thank you.
Management is easy except for the people. So for us, so much of the push is driven by your work culture. Same for any business. Empowering those at the lowest level to make decisions on how we're going to operate. If there is a desire to have an all-knowing city manager or all-knowing and powerful large CEO, those days are gone, in my opinion. You have to surround yourself with people with good heads and good hearts that are empowered to make decisions and go out there and know the mission and the vision of your company or your city. And as long as they are operating within those parameters, then you're going to have a culture that gets stuff done, that makes stuff happen. It is extremely easy, especially in government, to come up with a million reasons to say no. It's very easy to be risk averse in government, similar to like nobody got fired for buying IBM back in the day. But you want to have innovators and you want to push and you want to get stuff done. And you have to have the right people on the bus. So when we identify talent that's coming into the organization, we want to give them opportunities for advancement. We want to, follow, the Dan Pink straight out of the book stuff, autonomy, mastery, purpose, come in. And for a city, it's easy, in my opinion, because to connect to the community and say, that's what you're doing. You're serving 130,000 friends, family, and neighbors with services. When that can connect with somebody, they can get beyond just themselves and know that they're playing a role in a bigger thing going forward. But it's very difficult to hire somebody and know right up front. Like, hiring's hard. It's like speed dating, right? You get to talk to somebody for a very brief period of time and you don't really find out what you're working with for a while. And for us, that's been driven by having great healthcare, great retirement, all this, telling people about your mission, your vision, what you're all about, and bringing them in. And so, just like the best customer you got is the one that you keep. It's customer acquisition is high, staff acquisition is high. You got to keep your people happy and motivated.
I want to follow up on that and ask, is there a shortage of talent going into local government? Is it hard to attract talent to local government?
I think that it is not as hard as it was a few years ago. We're seeing a lot more people applying for local government. Some of the interesting dichotomy is on some level when the private sector is hot and moving, that's when we lose people because private sector salaries can generally be a little bit higher. So it's interesting when the private sector softens a little bit, that's when actually we are able to hire a little bit more of, I would say, seasoned professionals on into public service. So it's very interesting, but I think at the executive and management level, frankly, it is scary, the level of talent that is out there. I know, so Helen was an internal promotion in Brownsville. I've been, they voted a few weeks ago, I'll be the next city manager in the city of Round Rock starting in December. So you really, as a city, have to grow your talent internally, because when you go out to the well, it is a little bit concerning, the level of talent that's available and ready and willing to come and work in local government.
Well, congratulations. Lexi, what is your vision of a smart city going forward?
Was that for me?
Yes.
Oh.
Sorry.
Well, I love that question because just a fun fact about my application for Clearworld. So when I joined, I thought that this was a solar lighting company. Within a few weeks, we were speaking to the Pentagon and floor on smart bases, and it was information overload when I started 5 years ago. And so my passion is in information for all. We're working in other countries to deploy Wi-Fi. But my idea of a smart city is really one that's future-proof, one that leaves room for growth, one that is making our communities safer and more connected. I think the city of the future has people feeling like stakeholders, like their votes, like their engagement with the city matters. A lot of the work that we do as a manufacturer, we don't come in with trucks to employ our own people to do this installation work. So my favorite part about the job is finding and having really close relationships with our installation partners and the local governments there and the communities, because it really is a community engagement play. In my opinion, smart cities is a place that people feel safe, secure, and heard.
And what is your vision of it, Brooks? And please don't say Red Rock. Go beyond that.
Yeah. So I think Lexi nailed it. To me, it's easy to focus on the technology and the shiny thing that's going to solve all of your governmental problems. But to me, you have to go a layer deeper than that. And, a smart city, I think, is synonymous with a stable city, a city that is visioning where it's going to be in the coming years. And if you're not looking at technology as a component of what you need to be investing in, you're not paying attention to what the world is doing outside of you. And so for me, a smart city is one that is investing in its future and investing in its people and empowering them to go out there and find the right tools to make that happen. And those tools are diverse and they are ever changing. To me, this notion that you're going to put in a software system like our public safety system. We put it in 20 years ago, and we're just now replacing it. So the notion that the life cycle of a smart system that you have is going to be 20 years, that probably is in the past. And so I think it's incredibly important for cities to be partnering with companies that understand the potential for silos and how they can help us break out of those silos through APIs and through moving data from one portion of the business to the other and leveraging that data to make decisions about how we're going to operate and set policy into the future. So for me, the biggest push that we should have over the next year or two will be looking at the data that we have and leveraging artificial intelligence and new technology to gain insight out of that information that would be very difficult for a group of analysts or a team of people to look at. Once you can start to harness, and business has been doing this for 2 decades, so we're way late to the party on this. But once you can go through all of that data that you have and communicate it in a way that's simple and start to make community decisions within the laws and the frameworks of the state of Texas, that's what a smart city will be.
I don't know what a smart city is because the criteria can vary, but I do know that my 2 compatriots on the stage here are the smartest people I've met in a long time, and I thank them for being a wonderful panel, and I hope you'll thank them heartily as well. Thank you. That concludes this session.
Thank
you all.
Thank you.